Hello! This is the part of the video where I'm going to be breaking down the code that I made for my 2D game. So without further ado, I'm just going to get straight into it. First off, we're going to look at the player character blueprints. So this, for me, it's the Goose underscore BP. First thing we're going to be looking at is how I added the HUD. So, as you saw, when the player kills an enemy, it's added into the corner, into the top right. And this is how it's added to the screen. So on event begin play, so as soon as the game begins, a sequence is put in because there are two types of code that wants to use event begin play. So it goes from event begin play to a sequence, and it creates a HUD widget, which is the HUD, and adds it to the viewport. So basically, it adds to the player screen. It adds the HUD to the player screen. But I'll go into this code a bit later. For jumping, I have in the project settings within input, I've put a spacebar and a W, so when the player presses spacebar or W, they jump. So this is what this is referencing. So when W or space is pressed, the jumping is set to true. This is then delayed for 2 seconds. After that, the jumping is set to false and the character is no longer jumping. Setting different animations and their rotations. So for this, for the event tick is set, and then it goes to a branch. Now, if this branch is false, it will actually no. I'll talk about true. If this branch is true, for if the player is jumping, it will play the jumping goose flipbook. But if it is false, then it will go into compare float, which is basically if the player is staying still, that it will play a idle animation. But if it is, if they're moving either way, so either pressing A or D, it will go to walking. And the reason I have two of these is over here. We've got a set control rotation, as when I animated the goose, I only had it facing one way. So this allows the goose to be rotated to look like it's moving in both directions, looking in both directions. So this is for when it turns left, and this is for when it's going right. And the player controllers are there just so this can take over the player controls. When collided with an item, controls are reversed. So I have an item placed in the world where when the player collides with it, it reverses the controls. So this was for my original movement, but I've had to combine the two. So when the player is moving sideways, so moving A or pressing A or D, a branch is pushed, and if the item has been collected by the player, so if the is reversed is true, then the player will move -1, so add -1. But if it's false, then it will add +1, which means it will just be walking normally. This is a custom event I created. So when this custom event is triggered using the is reversed, it will -1 reversal float that I have here, which is set to 1. So we've got -1 to +1, which is then reversed. That is then delayed for 10 seconds, and then the reversal is put back on, and it's turned off. So basically, when the player collides, the reverse is turned on. After 10 seconds, the reverse is turned off, and it goes back to normal. Next up, we've got the enemy blueprint. I might be jumping between Goose and enemy because they are very linked to each other. No, yeah, we're fine. So yes, so custom event is set to how many enemies are dead. So this is kind of like what I was going to talk about. So a custom event I've set here, which is enemy is dead. So when this is triggered, it's cast to the main player. So it's getting the player character. And I've set a variable here in the Goose blueprint. So this is a kill count integer that I've set. And basically it's going to add 1 to that HUD that we showed earlier. Enemies walking around, turning around using vectors. So this is very similar to the blueprint that we have for the Goose. So when it begins, when it's called, if the branch is set to true, so if he's walking right, then he will move +1. But if he is walking left, he will walk -1. And the speed is set to the same because there's no need for it to be a different speed. Set world rotation. This is similar to flipping the animations. So instead of flipping the control rotation, we're flipping the world rotation here, but it's basically the same principle. So once again, if the branch is true, then the player isn't walking right, but if the branch is true down here, then they are walking right. Yeah. Enemy damaging player. Oh, I didn't put that in, never mind. Enemy pacing. So this is for the vector. I've got a vector within the world. We click on this enemy here. We've got these vectors set for the enemies so they know the path that they're walking. And in here is how I set the vectors. So we've set these different variables. We've got walk here, start location, and end location. So the start location is where the enemy is placed. And then they are told to walk 400 paces across. So they'll plus 400 paces, and then they'll go back to the end location, which is 0. So start and end are the same, whilst walk to here is plus 400. So it will walk to 400 and walk back. Yes, so this is for the end of the game. So when the player collides with the portal over here, it has a collision box. So basically, when they collide with this box here, a widget is added to the screen. The ending widget is added to the viewport, so it's added to the screen. It's delayed for 20 seconds if the player hasn't already exited. If they haven't, then it will just quit the game first. Yes, so this is for the moving platforms that we have here and here. The event begin play, it will perform a timeline which we have here, and then it will set the actor location and add the start location to the moving timeline. So the start location is 0 and the moving timeline is this. So it will go back to where it was. So it will start here, go to there and go back. So yes, when the player comes into contact with the reversed item, it's destroyed.